it's Amanda here, and it is that time of year. We are talking about the Oden's Eye holiday palettes. Thankfully, Oden's Eye was able to send these two new holiday palettes over to me well ahead of time so that I'll be able to post this video the day that these palettes are revealed, which is November 7th. And then the holiday palettes will be available for sale on the Oden's Eye website on November 10th. These palettes will be priced at $43.90 US. However, you will be able to use coupon codes on these. You can use my affiliate code. It's just my first name, Amanda, and that will save you 10% on pretty much anything on the Oden's Eye site. Those codes just don't work on collaboration items, but they will work on these holiday releases. And not only are we getting these two new holiday palettes, but we're seeing the return of last year's holiday palettes. These two, Hey Reindeer and Snow Dream, these were the holiday palettes from 2023, and they'll be making a return. We're not going to see a return of the year before that holiday palette. So these ones, Christmas Eve and Merry Christmas, are not slated to be restocked. So Hey Reindeer and Snow Dream will be restocked. And then we have these new palettes, the Rosy Jingle palette and the Silvery Bliss palette. I've got a ton of info for you. I am going to focus on these two new palettes. If you want to see close-ups, swatches, and looks with last year's palettes, I will link that previous video down in the description box for you. That way you can see these in action as well if you need a refresher, or if these weren't on your radar last year. Make sure you check that video out for more about these palettes. But today I really want to focus on these two new holiday palettes, wearing Rosy Jingle on this side and Silvery Bliss on this side. So you'll get to see a couple of eye looks. I'll show you close-ups, swatches, a few comparisons, and I'm going to give you all my thoughts along the way. Let's start with a close-up look at this Rosy Jingle palette first.
First up is a pinky palette. This is called Rosy Jingle. Both palettes are 16 pans and they're the same shape and size as the previous 16 pan palette. So if you've seen any of those from Hella, from the Halloween palettes, from the previous Christmas palettes, this is the exact same type of layout, same type of packaging. You can see there are some cool little imprints and festive bells and bows type of imagery in some of the shadows. Naturally, I think that Rosy Jingle and Hey Reindeer are going to draw some comparison. They are very pink-centric packaging, and they tend to be brighter, very pastel, bright type of color. So you can see here when they're side by side, they're not actually that similar in the way of one-to-one dupes, but they do tend to go really nicely together, so I can see them being good companion palettes. The Rosy Jingle palette has 5 regular matte shades and then 2 matte shades that have a little micro sparkle, but they look like mattes in swatch just when you see them in the pans. The yellow and periwinkle shades do have a very, very fine micro shimmer. And then the rest of the shades, as you can see here, are all different types of shimmers with the exception of the very last shade, Toffee. That one is definitely a satin, but otherwise you can see there are some shifty shades. Some are a lot more opaque and foiled type of metallics. Others are more of that wash of sparkle topper type of shimmers. When you're looking at these swatches on my arms, the top row are finger swatch application, and then the bottom row are applied with a regular flat eyeshadow brush. That way you can see 2 different types of swatches. And I also want you to see these palettes in action on my eyes today. So I'm just going to go ahead and prime both eyes with the Ulta Matte Eye Primer. And I was drawn in by these soft, silvery, cool purples. I really wanted to put this light periwinkle color called Blue Cream to the test because this type of shadow often can be patchy, underwhelming, hard to work with in my experience. And I was actually pleasantly surprised by how well that shade in particular seem to adhere to the eye and seem to apply really evenly. Once I started blending this matte shade called Warmth on top of that, I did half expect the periwinkle shade underneath to just blend away and become nothing. I will say the Warmth shade overpowered quite a bit, but as I layered, I felt like I was able to get a great blend. And sometimes I do struggle with that with these super high white based pastel type of shadows. So I was pleasantly surprised by the performance and the layerability. I am somebody that likes to blend and mix my matte shades a lot. So that's an important quality for me. And I was pleased with the performance all around of this palette. I do want to mention though that when I wore the shade Rosy Jingle, that's that super bright, hot matte pink on the top row. I did experience some staining with that shadow, which is kind of out of the norm for me. So I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that in this review since it's relevant to my experience with this Rosy Jingle palette. I overall have no complaints about the performance. It's just the color story that isn't really my personal taste, but I did end up loving this little sugar plum fairy eye look that I ended up with. While I don't necessarily see myself reaching for this palette a lot, I would definitely happily recreate this look. So I think that says something pretty major. Let's move on to the Silvery Bliss palette. Of course, this has the same dimensions, same layout, same little round mirror inside. But in the Silvery Bliss palette, all of the mattes are true mattes. This is a half matte, half shimmer palette. So there's none of the micro shimmer mattes, no satin instead of shimmers. This is a true 50-50 split, which is my personal favorite. I love a 50-50 ratio of mattes and shimmers. And I really like this color story more. I'm just more drawn to these particular shades and tones. So I am more inclined to enjoy this palette for my own personal taste. When it comes to formula and performance, I think that these two new holiday palettes are evenly matched. It's more of just what your color preferences are. And this more grungy reds and neutrals is just more in line with what I prefer to wear. With these brush swatches, I think that the red shades don't apply as well with a flat brush, but they do work really well actually on the eye when they're being blended with a softer, more rounded brush. At least in my experience, I think that these shadows actually perform a lot better than their swatches would suggest. Through my many years of reviewing makeup, I've found that red eyeshadows do tend to be quite a bit drier to the touch, and therefore I think that they can swatch in a kind of underwhelming way, but they do tend to perform a lot better actually on the eye, at least in my experience. And that's across the board for all different kinds of brands. I have gravitated towards this palette a lot more than I thought I would for day-to-day wear. With those pops of red in this color story, I think that this palette initially looks a little bit more bold than it actually is in practice, especially because so many of the shimmer shades are more toned down. Even the ones that aren't neutrals are just a little bit more toned down. So I feel like there's a great balance in here between some bold steps with those bright reds. And red is quite an intense eyeshadow color. It's definitely not for everyone, and I understand that for sure. But for me, this has such an intriguing mix of those bold reds, some really sultry, smoky colors, and some all around just very approachable, neutral base type of shades that really round out the color story so well and make this an exciting and inspiring palette for me. I do want to mention, I think this Silvery Bliss palette would be a great companion palette to the Snow Dream palette from last year because this has a lot of the deeper, richer shades that I sometimes feel like I'm missing a little bit. So I think that if you have the Snow Dream palette, this Silvery Bliss palette would be a really nice companion, a nice foil to that color story, a nice addition to that color story. If we have the same taste in eyeshadow colors, then definitely give that combo a shot. Now I want to jump into some palette comparisons. I did 3 different comparisons for each one of these palettes. I probably could have dug through and tried to find some more, but I really just went for the top 3 that I felt were going to be most useful for you. First of all, a pretty recent release from Oden's Eye is this Eternal Twilight palette, and I do think there are some pretty significantly similar eye looks that would come out of these two. So, if you already picked up Eternal Twilight, maybe consider that you could pass on Rosy Jingle for now. Now, on to a ColourPop palette that immediately went to the top of my list as soon as I opened the Rosy Jingle palette and saw this very pink golds type of color story. I immediately thought of the Malibu Barbie palette. As you can see, Malibu Barbie is maybe a little bit darker, also has those blues in there instead of the soft little periwinkle purpley colors, but not too far off. And lastly, for the Rosy Jingle comparisons, I have this mega palette from ColourPop. This one's called It's All Good, and I think it is a pretty good comparison for Rosy Jingle. Again, not quite hitting the right notes on those soft purpley shades, but in general, I do think the majority of eye looks that come out of these two would have quite a bit of overlap. Now we're going to move over to the Silvery Bliss palette comparisons, starting first with a little combo that I put together, the All That palette plus the Main Squeeze palette. I believe the All That palette has been discontinued. I'm pretty sure Main Squeeze is still available, but if you missed out on the All That palette, maybe this new Oden's Eye offering could kind of fill that gap for you if you are feeling a little All That palette FOMO. A couple more ColourPop comparison palettes. This time I'm combining Troublemaker and Wine and Only. The result of these two palettes combined is definitely a bit more cool toned, a lot more true neutral leaning, whereas Silvery Bliss does have a bit more warmth, especially in that matte brown, the gold, and some of the reds having that golden tone to them as well. So, Troublemaker and Wine and Only, actually, I love this combo. I'm using it immediately. And lastly, 2 Huda Beauty palettes combined, the Pretty Grunge and Naughty Nude large palettes do make again a pretty decent comparison, maybe even better than the last ColourPop combo that we looked at. So if you have any of these palettes floating around in your collection already, it may be worth a second look before you decide on what purchases you want to make. Just a reminder.
Sometimes you want to be a twinkly little snow fairy, and sometimes you want to be a sultry Yuletide vampire. I don't know what else to tell you. Get you a girl that can do both. Ultimately, I like the way both of these eye looks turned out. Honestly, this cool purpley look with the Rosy Jingle palette is super beautiful. I definitely would recreate and rewear this look again in the future. 10 out of 10. I think it's so beautiful. However, in general, there are a lot of shades in here that I just don't really gravitate towards. These shades here, I can see myself wearing a lot. This palette just has a lot of eyeshadows that are not my favorite things. I'm not a big pink eyeshadow fan, and I'm not a big pastel eyeshadow fan. So this just really wasn't made for me. It just ultimately doesn't suit my preferences overall. I still think it's pretty. I still think that it performs well. The shadows are beautiful. If these are your types of colors, then I absolutely do recommend this. It's just not the one that I gravitate towards for personal style reasons. However, this Silvery Bliss palette I absolutely love. I can see myself getting a lot of use out of this palette. I really enjoy these colors. We've got a lot of grungy neutrals. There's definitely a smoky, sultry type of vibe, which is a look that I'm really comfortable with and I wear a lot. I can see myself using and wearing all of the eyeshadows in this palette. I can already imagine 10 different looks that I want to do with these colors. I had a really hard time narrowing down which shades I wanted to choose for today's eye look, and I'm already excited and thinking about using this again tomorrow. So this is definitely my favorite of the two, just based on my preferences and my own personal style aligning with these colors and these shades. But I think ultimately we are getting the beautiful packaging, the high performing formulas, just everything that I have come to expect from Oden's Eye, which is a very high bar. I am not surprised. I have enjoyed their holiday releases over the past few years. They've been incredibly successful sales wise, and I really think that this is going to be the hot ticket palette this year. Maybe that's just my own bias creeping in because I do enjoy this one so much. I would love to hear what you think about these palettes. Are you interested? Are you going to take this opportunity to pick up last year's palettes? Let me know what you think about these. Do you want to see some more looks? Are there more comparisons that I didn't include in this video that you want to see maybe in a YouTube short? I always love to hear what you think about things too, so leave all your thoughts down in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye! What? What are you talking about? Almost all of my holiday listings are already up on Etsy. I love these little snowflake earrings. They're neutral enough that they go with a lot of outfits. They're not too like in your face, but they're still festive. Holiday, you know? Sometimes I want to wear a giant peppermint on my ear, and sometimes I just want a dainty little snowflake. Anyway, go check out my Etsy holiday listings because I worked really hard to get those all finished, and I'm really happy with how they turned out. So go check them out. Thanks. I genuinely don't know which look I like better. What? What? I can't say words. I'm fine. I mean, just the sparkle on here. Okay. Okay, I'm a little sparkly sugar plum fairy. And that is the end of the discussion. I do love this though. It just feels so like rock and roll. I don't know. With a little eyeliner and a little half lash. Badass. Did I do it? Okay. That's what she said. Sorry. All right. Wish me luck. Wish us all luck. Maybe make myself a little snack. My new favorite snack right now, it's not really a new favorite. My current obsession, whenever I'm snacking, I love medjool dates. Oh my gosh, they're so good. They're so good. Oh, nature's candy. Keep thinking about it like, oof, I want to just snack on a little squishy, sweet little date right now. Oh, who are you barking at? All right, got a bunch more stuff to film. Gotta stay busy. I love each and every one of your beautiful little faces so much. And we are going to make it through this holiday season together. So good luck. Good luck to us all. But we're gonna do it. It's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be hectic. It's gonna have a lot on our plates. But we'll make it through together. Because why? Say it with me. We don't have any other choice. I'm doing fine, personally. And I will see you soon in another video. And guess what? That video is also going to be an indie palette swatch and review because we're getting another reveal this week. That's right. Hold on to your hats, folks. Okay, love your face. Bye.